Today on the Relationship Renovation podcast, we take a look at a dynamic that affects many couples, and that's when one person is ready for change and the other person isn't.
The first step is accepting that we both have things that we have to change. If you're thinking, well, I want to do whatever I want, I just need my partner to change. Well, then maybe you should be single.
We talk about why that happens. We talk about strategies to move forward.
And so we have to take a look at what's keeping us from getting to our goal, because that's where we need to do the work.
The most effective thing is looking back at yourself and saying, what can I do? And we help you understand that this is just something that a lot of couples deal with, and there's definitely a path forward. So stay tuned. Hello, and welcome to the Relationship Renovation podcast. My name is EJ Kerwin, and today I am without my usual partner in crime, Tara Kerwin. Tara's not feeling great today, but I'm excited and grateful that Kelby Jones, who's a therapist at our center, he's actually been on a few episodes before. So for those people who haven't met you before or didn't hear that first episode, just tell us a little bit about yourself, why you became a therapist, and why you enjoy working with couples.
Yeah. Well, so I live here in Tucson, Arizona. I've been a therapist for a couple of years. And, prior to doing that, I did a lot of different things. I mean, therapy is kind of my second, maybe third iteration of my career at some point. And so, I became a therapist through doing my own work, and realizing that not only, was it something that I was just deeply interested in for myself for personal reasons, it was just a line of thinking that that I really wanted to kind of sit with and learn more about. And so that just kind of started this progression where I ended up finding myself in my master's program doing counseling. So yeah. Here I am. In terms of why I like to do couples, I like to do couples because, you're really working with a system, not just two individuals, though I do, love doing the individual aspect of it all as well. But working with that system, kind of, people come in and they just really don't know what to do about their relationship. They're feeling, feeling really hopeless. They just don't really know what the next steps are. And so, it feels nice to be in that role, to be like, okay, here, let's do this. Let me assist you. Let me support you in figuring this out, because sometimes it just feels so big. But getting to be on the outside, and that, I often refer to it as a luxury position, to be able to look into the relationship, because they're struggling, they're really in it.
Yeah, I think that's so neat, because, for those of people who are listening, who listen as just people who are trying to figure their stuff out and trying to improve their relationship, we have this like unique experience of being in that room with a couple. Mm-hmm. And it is so like fundamentally different than when you're working with an individual, because when you're working with an individual, you're sitting there and you're oftentimes talking about things that happened throughout the week or happened in the past or whatever, and you're helping them make sense of it. And then a lot of times with couples, you're like you said, you're like in the system with them. Mm-hmm. Like you're not a fly on the wall. Like you are literally a participant and seeing how they trip over each other and how frustrated they are with each other and how they don't communicate well with each other. Like you definitely, as a therapist with couples, have more of a hands-on, like real experience mm-hmm. of being in their dysfunction, in their suffering, and able to impact it right there in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that feels, as an individual, that feels, self-serving, I guess. That feels really good to be able to, to have a direct impact, because like you said, with individuals, it's all anecdotal things that have happened and kind of processing through that. But with couples, you're seeing that play out in front of you in real time, and you can make tweaks, to the system, to the process that they're in. And you get to see in that moment how that can shift perspectives, how it can shift energy, how it can shift connection. And, with individuals, you just kind of hope that they go out into their life and implement, but in couples, they kind of do it right then and there.
Yeah. I tell a lot of a story to or just an example to my couples sometimes when we get to the communication series in our program, how I've worked with couples where literally, I'm directing, where I'm like, one member of the couple will say something and you can just tell the other person like recoils or like gets away or gets triggered. And I've literally said like, hey, do this. And then the person does it. I've told them to do it. They both know I've literally told them, but that person doing it differently causes the other person to like, have this like breakdown or softening or whatever. And that can have such an impact of literally just directing somebody of how to do something. And then they have a better chance of being able to do it, maybe next week or a month from now, and it's just, it's a powerful experience. And I think this actually like feeds really great into our topic today, which is, we're talking about how great it is when the couple comes in and we have the ability to have a positive impact on their relationship. But one of the big hurdles is getting both people in, right? And oftentimes there's one person who really wants to get into couples therapy. We've talked about this frequently, Tara and I, and the other person is not so keen on it, and how difficult that is. What do you just sort of launching into that? What comes to mind?
Yeah, just this idea that, they may both physically be present, but are they actually present?
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing that kind of happens in the couple's environment is you get to see in this little microcosm of your therapy session, the therapist gets to observe what is probably happening regularly in the dynamic of the couple on the day-to-day basis. And we get to see these little moments of ambivalence, of resistance. And, that usually indicates that there's probably a lot of that happening on the day-to-day.
Yeah.
And so we have to look at couples, understanding that it is couples therapy, not individual therapy with your spouse present.
Yeah.
Yeah. And many times that's what I will see, especially early on, and as a male therapist in this practice, I get a lot of couples for the explicit reason where one partner will say, oh, I feel like my partner would be more comfortable with a male therapist. And, not to generalize based on gender, typically that's going to be the male partner who they're talking about, in heterosexual, heteronormative relationships, it's usually the female making the appointment while the male is ambivalent,
dragging
resistant.
their feet a little bit to come in.
Yeah.
I mean, so,
but it happens in both genders
for sure. Because I mean, one of the reasons we decided to do this today was in response to a listener email where it was a heterosexual couple. He's in therapy, she's not, and he's like really like, he's trying to be patient and wants to be supportive. But at the same time, he's, he just wants his partner so bad to go into her own therapy at the least, if not go into couples therapy. So that begs the question right there is like, what are some of the reasons? Because we want people to understand their partner, even if their partner's not in therapy yet or isn't in the process. What are some of the reasons that you see that one individual is just resistant? Let's say change. Let's not even say therapy yet. Let's just say like that they're resistant to looking at that something's wrong in their relationship or that they and their partner have to do things differently.
Well, I think the first step is accepting that we both have things that we have to change. One of the questions I try to ask, especially new couples, is, what are you each willing to change about yourself to better this relationship? And I'm really, I apply emphasis to what are you each and yourself, because many times, we're coming into couples therapy and we'll see people, well, when they change, I'm really here for them. I'm really here to make sure that they hear me and that what they need to change on. And it's, we have to look inward. Change is an internal process that has external benefits, but we have to look at that and we have to understand that both people have things that they need to change to be in this relationship. And I was we were pre-discussion on this, you know, if you're thinking, well, I want to do whatever I want, I just need my partner to change. Well, then maybe you should be single, you know, because relationships are about change. I mean, relationships inherently are about growth. You know, they're an opportunity for growth, and they're going to highlight areas of our life where we need that growth, that in a single environment we probably wouldn't notice.
Yeah, and that's one of the real hallmarks to the way I and Tara and I, as we've created all of our programs, come from, is this idea of even though it's painful in relationship when it's breaking down, when you're arguing a lot, it almost always points to the fact that both of you have some serious personal growth, right? Mm-hmm. And I think change, you used that word a few times. I think that is people aren't very aware of the fact that we really don't like change.
No.
And even if there's dysfunctionality within our relationship, a lot of times there's this almost unconscious fear of change of if we go to therapy, or if we really start looking, or if I engage into that conversation where my partner's I'm not happy, I want things to be different, then I'm opening up to a change. And what the thing about change is, we don't know how it's going to turn out. And so it's almost if we keep things the same, maybe then it'll just pass. It's a very big bury your head in the sand and pray that just the weather changes. Mm-hmm. I think it's just a normal thing. We don't like change, mm-hmm. And that will keep it out, because it introduces chaos. How's it gonna end up?
Right. Well, and as somebody who works with me outside of this moment here, that I'm a very somatic awareness, polyvagal based, nervous system attunement, all of that. And so as you're talking about that, I'm well, yes, because absolutely it's true, because change is by definition uncomfortable. And our nervous system, even when we know that it's going to be the thing that ultimately is going to help us, our nervous system doesn't like change regardless. Yeah. And because, like you said, it can't guarantee, it can't predict. And so much of the science of safety is wrapped up in this ability to predict that will be okay.
Yeah.
And so in some cases, we can't guarantee that we'll be okay. We can't control situations, because control is an illusion. But with oftentimes we'll look at the anxiety of change, and we'll try to control the variables to create a better ability to predict. The problem with that, though, is we never really had that control in the first place. And so really, resilience is the antidote to that anxiety. Resilience is the antidote to that discomfort that brings with change, that I will be okay, and this felt sense of knowing that I'll be okay. And there's a lot of different ways we can increase resilience, but I think increasing resilience in the relationship, and honestly going to therapy or engaging with growth, whether that be through therapy or not, is an act of building resilience, because you're teaching that nervous system that we can navigate change in a really safe way. If we can navigate change in a safe way.
Yeah, that's okay. That's all right. So that is really interesting, and I feel it's almost something that every time we've spoken about the resistance to getting into therapy, that we haven't really nailed on the head is that when there's one partner who's really struggling, who really wants to change the relationship, they've gotten to a place where they cannot go on the way it is, and the other person is not there yet, that probably that person is unconsciously feeling I can't handle whatever change is about to come on. I can't handle the lack of surety of knowing that this will turn out good. And this is a thing that I tell couples all the time at the beginning is we don't know how this is going to end up. Mm-mm. And that's scary. And so I want to acknowledge that for the two of you is we don't know, hopefully this is going to end up amazing, but we don't know that. But we almost I feel it was a breakthrough in Tara and I's relationship at one point where I was no matter what, I want you to be happy. And if that's not with me, then God, that would be horrible.
Yeah.
But that would be okay. And I had to even just from the moment I accepted that, it felt like like things started to change within our relationship and within myself as well. Because like you said, control, which is an illusion, it's like, I'm letting go of control. I'm saying like, okay, I don't know how things are going to turn out, but with a letting go of control, there's also a freedom of like, okay, like I can look at myself. I can be really honest. I can maybe be more present for you as well. And so I think that that's a huge thing that couples come up against, is one person who's just like, I'm just too afraid. I don't think it would be, I can't walk into the unknown with you.
Yeah. You know, from the nervous system aspect of it all, remembering that, you know, your brain's job, your nervous system's job is to keep you safe, not necessarily happy. And it may actually sacrifice a sense of happiness to find a sense of safety.
Yeah.
And so what happens is it'll keep us complacent in our comfort zone that we know is dysfunctional. We know it's dysfunctional, but it's the, you know, as we say, it's the devil that I know. You know, I can navigate this dysfunction, but I don't know what new dysfunction could come. I don't know what healing looks like. I don't know what a secure relationship looks like. And so I don't know that I can manage that, you know, in that change environment.
Well, and then coming back to this listener who wrote in, and just this dynamic that we see of one person being like, things have to change. The other person being like, I'm not ready. I don't want to go. I don't want to look at this yet. You know, then that's like, we're in like two different places in, and this goes back to like my early background in addiction of like pre-contemplation of dealing with the problem, contemplation. Maybe I'll deal with the problem. Okay, I'm dealing with the problem. You're in like two different phases, right? And one person is in the phase of like, they're ready to like rattle the cage. They're like, the hell with this. I cannot deal with it. I need to change. The other person may be in the place where they're not even looking at it. They're like, we're fine. I mean, how many couples have you heard where one person's like, I think we're fine. You know, I think we're okay. You know, and so that's and that, okay. So then let's get into maybe helping somebody feel empowered on whatever side that they're in this, right? Because you can't force somebody into a place that they're not in, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it's really interesting because it brings up two thoughts. One, you know, and we kind of discussed this, where when we look at grief and we look at acceptance, we have to rumble. We have to, you know, to use the Brene Brown term, we have to rumble with that vulnerability of the grief that comes along with accepting something. And when I talk about grief in this case, because I think a lot of times when we hear grief, we think about death and loss. But we have to look at that as it's the death and loss of ideas. It's the death and loss of dynamics that we thought were okay. Or it's having to take a look at potentially the trauma that creates these dynamics in the first place. And that involves a level of grief. And I think sometimes we can be resistant to wanting to feel that, to go through those stages of grief. And it shifts with that resistance, it shifts to that resignation piece, which is just like, well, this is just how it is. It's not really going to change. And, you know, and oftentimes when you have one partner who is really engaged with change and the other partner who is not, what happens is the partner who's engaged with change, they may potentially get to a place of resignation because they're trying so hard to get their partner to change. And what I would say to that couple is stop focusing so much on your partner's change and focus on yours. You know, because that's what you can control.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, so again, I think you really nailed it. And it's like so obvious, but also so like subtle and difficult, right? Is that at the end of the day, you just have to continue to look back at yourself. And that's like the lesson that we talk to couples about all the time, is like every time you're in that mode of pointing your finger at the other person of like, why aren't you doing this? Why don't you want to change things? Why won't you look at yourself? It's like we have to like turn it around to the one thing we have power over is like, okay, I'm just going to work on myself. You know, I'm just going to, and if my partner's not ready yet, well, then I do my own work. I'm reading books. I'm going to therapy. I'm just focusing. And because we also know that does change the system. It's great if both people are in unison working on the relationship, but one person changes the dynamic. If I'm less reactive, if I'm less defensive, then it changes our challenging moments. It's hard though. It's hard because you want the other person to be in that change as much as you.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that's this summer has like just been really on repeat in my mind is this idea that just because something sounds simple, it doesn't mean it's easy.
Yeah.
Simplicity and easy are not synonyms,
Yeah.
And so, there often are a lot of things that we look at in therapy and it's like, it's really that simple? And it's like, yeah, but is it that easy? No. And change is never easy. And when we're focusing inward on ourselves, what happens, like you said, it's a system that we're working with. Your relationship is a system. And so when one aspect of the system changes, one aspect of it's getting a different input, then the system is going to have a different output. And sometimes it can be enough to agitate the system enough that things start to heal. It's also kind of this concept of I'm not a quantum physicist, but I do know this term, quantum causality. It's this term of quantum causality, and we're all familiar with this. It's the whole chicken before the egg thing. And the truth is, in systems, we can't really determine where it began.
Yeah.
We can't determine, did you trigger me and then as a result I responded? Did I trigger you and then you responded? We just really can't determine that because it's these micro subtle moments that our nervous system picks up on. So we actually do ourselves a disservice trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
And when we look at a situation and we say, they need to change, why can't you do this? Why can't you do that? That's just us trying to figure out that quantum causality and really.
Yeah. What's going to be the thing that begins the change? Well, maybe the change has already begun.
Right.
It's just you're not in a place where it feels great yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I'm a Mel Robbins fan, and what she teaches us, right, is that when you set a goal for yourself, your prefrontal cortex kind of already outlines the steps to complete that goal. It's just that our brain, our nervous system, when we go to enact that goal, we have about 5 seconds from that moment of realizing, oh, this is the opportunity to, show up differently to the relationship. We have 5 seconds before our nervous system starts talking us out of it.
Yeah.
And so she has this whole thing on the 5-second rule. I highly recommend it. But what that teaches us, though, is that I can only control what's happening for me. I can only make steps that's happening for me. And to battle my own resistance means to take a look at how my nervous system is actually keeping me from getting into that state of change.
Yeah. And I've seen over and over and over that this works. I've seen many, many times where there's one person who's really sees that there needs to be change in the relationship. There's the other person doesn't want to look at it yet. And then the other person starts to just focus on themselves. And sometimes they focus on themselves for 3 months. Sometimes they focus on themselves for a year. It can be longer.
Yeah.
But eventually I've seen where like the other person begins to kind of like just perk their head up and just be like, okay, something's happening for this other person. Mm-hmm. And then slowly, and again, we don't have that control. We don't know where in the process we are, but they slowly begin to get on board. And then eventually they begin to work in unison together, which we know from the very beginning of our conversation is the powerful place when both people are like, it's one of the first things we do with couples, right? Is set goals. Mm-hmm. We've set our goals. We know the kind of relationship we want to have. And we have this person who's helping us get there. We have this system we're working through that's going to get us there. And it does work. You have to be patient and you have to be willing to like ruthlessly focus on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I have an anticipatory thought that I might hear from somebody if I'm talking to them about this, which is, well, what do I do if they never change? What do I do if I do all of this change and it doesn't agitate the system enough? And, that's where we have to look at the fact, and this is true for a lot of things, but especially in states of change, the things that keep us safe, the things that allow us to return back to a baseline while navigating that change are our boundaries in the situation.
Yeah.
And to point back to a previous episode, we had Dr. Abby Metcalf on, and she talks a lot about this, like showing up to the relationship the way that you want it to be, but understanding that your boundaries are what are going to keep you safe in that situation. Meaning, I might have a time-based boundary where I say I'm going to give this 6 months, I'm going to give this a year of working on myself to see if this starts to change things in the relationship. And that boundary may be that in a year, if things haven't changed and I've put my wholehearted effort into my own work and it's not prompting change in the relationship, then maybe I can look at that point and say, is this really, the best relationship for me? And it points back to what our kind of understated overall goal in couples work is, at least how I approach it, which is that, I'm not in the business of saving relationships. I'm in the business of providing clarity and helping people get clarity for their relationship. And if clarity means that we can't be together, then that is a successful part of this, and nobody likes to think about that. We all want our relationship to survive. That's why we go into therapy. That's why we seek change. But understand that if you're that person and you have that little voice in the back of your head that's coming up and saying, how long am I going to do this? What if they don't change? Well, then think about what your boundaries are going to be, because that's where you can return to that sense of safety.
Yeah. So I think, like, just to kind of wrap it all up again and help me out, Kelby, here as I go through this, is just, it is a very common thing for people to be in different stages of change, that sometimes one person is in that action mode and the other person is in pre-contemplation. They're not even, like, their head isn't even there yet. And that the most important thing, one, is safety. I mean, you got to, there are limits here as far as abuse goes,
yes, absolutely.
and serious mental illness and other things where you have to, like, really, like, look at this in a slightly different way. But that most of the time, the most effective thing is looking back at yourself and saying, what can I do? Mm-hmm. How can I engage in a process of changing myself and using the information that's happening in my relationship for my own personal growth? And being very clear that, like, hey, at some point I would love for us to be working on this together. And then just knowing that we all have different tolerance for change. We have all have different tolerance for being in discomfort. But the most empowering thing is when we look at ourselves and we take control of what we can control, which is looking at our own thoughts, our own behaviors, our own feelings, our own communication, and using maybe the inconsistency in where you are and changing your relationship as a way to learn more about yourself and hopefully help your partner eventually get on board with you.
Yeah. Yeah. As Brene Brown says, what gets in the way becomes the way. And so we have to take a look at what's keeping us from getting to our goal, because that's where we need to do the work.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a lot of fear, I know that for, my anxiously attached individuals, that there's a lot of fear of disrupting the system, because if I disrupt the system, I'm going to be too much and they might leave, whatever that may be. But we have to also look at that from a sense of self-worth, like, but aren't I worth being in a relationship that works for me?
Yeah. Yeah. And, for those of you who are listening and maybe your partner is in a place where they're beginning to think about making change. I mean, we've developed an online program that gives people an opportunity to engage in this process at home by themselves. It's called Relationship Renovation at Home. It takes you through a lot of the steps that we do here at our center, as far as formulating goals together, as far as learning to communicate better, understanding each other's history. And so if that's something you're interested, please check it out. There's a link in our show notes to it. It's an affordable at-home way that you and your partner can engage in self-growth together.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen that at home work really well. I have a first-person experience with a really close friend of mine who navigated it, and it was super successful for them. So I highly recommend the at-home program for those of you who are listening, if you're not in the Tucson area, because it is highly effective.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kelby. It's been fun to connect in this way. And I love, you bring a lot of knowledge and also like passion about the nervous system and what's happening sort of in the brain and the nervous system that's sort of like underneath the hood. So much of what couples look at is sort of like, all the odometers on their car and the steering wheel and everything that's right there. And you have a great way of helping people understand that there's a lot going on underneath the hood that is affecting you. And if you have an awareness of that, it's another just like incredible tool. So thank you. I think you're very skillful in using that.
Thank you. My dad would be very proud that you compared me to a mechanic.
That's awesome.
So,
all right. Well, thank you all for listening. Please, check out our social media. Please, we love when we get you give a review or you rate the podcast. It really helps us out. And it also really helps. Just tell a friend, most of us can use some help in our relationship. And so if you know somebody who might gain something from listening to our show, please pass it on to them. And I'll use Tara's words, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Bye-bye.